Okay, we are live.
And we are live. To go back to what we were talking about before we went live, I like Blue Sky. It's like if I want to read posts about comics from creators, Blue Sky seems to be the place that I want to go. That's where a lot of the comic book folks are migrating to. So it's like that's my comic book place.
Yeah, there's been yet another exodus off of Twitter to Blue Sky because of the block thing, that changing how blocks work or whatever on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't pay attention to any of that.
Yeah. Apparently it used to be that when you blocked somebody, they couldn't see what you did, but they've changed it now so that block people can see what you say. They just can't respond.
No, but they can screenshot and
I'm like,
do their own
exactly
tweet.
Is the point of that. You know, whatever. That's the kind of thing that I was referring to. It's like a block is a block. And if that's not what you're going to do, then don't call it that. Call it call it a shmoo, or I don't know, whatever. But it's like,
it's more like you're muting them. You're not blocking them. You're just muting them.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, I have never had the kind of problems on Twitter that a lot of other people have that has made them want to jump ship to somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I believe it's because it's a matter of who you follow, and when somebody does or says something you don't like, what you do.
Yep.
I think those two things right there have kept my Twitter clear for years. Years ago, I went through a list of about 40 or 50 words, and I filtered those words. I really haven't had any problem. I block maybe a couple people a year that finally, torque me off enough that I don't even want to see what they have to say. Normally I don't care. I do what people tell you to do. Well, if you see something you don't like, just scroll on past it.
Yep.
But
yeah, social media exhausts me.
It can, for sure.
I just there's the fear of, especially if you're promoting something, there's the fear that you're not going to get it into the eyes of as many people as you want. So then you have a Twitter account and a Blue Sky account and a Threads account and an Instagram account. And, you got to post the same thing on each one of those places. And it gets exhausting.
Yeah. I don't know. As far as advertising, particularly something like a brand new podcast, let's say, I don't know where you go. I don't know what the best place to start doing that is anymore.
Yeah, because the fact of the matter is 9 times out of 10, when you put something up over at any of those places, you have no idea what their algorithms are going to do to it, and if anybody's even going to see it. So,
right. Yeah.
It's like whispering in a hurricane. That's the way I think about it.
Yeah. You just, you do the best you can, what you think should work, and then you just move on and do what you're going to do. That's why a lot of times with podcasting, one of the first things I tell new people is don't do it for listens.
Right.
Do it because you want to create. Do it because you want to do whatever it is you're doing. Then collect it and put it out there in some format so that other people who may be interested can see and interact with what you're doing. Beyond that, I don't know.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is, unless you are already somebody on social media that has like hundreds of thousands of engaged followers, you're not going to have a successful podcast for at least 3 to 4 years. If even, and successful, that's a definition that changes from person to person. So,
and that's why, whatever the statistic is, most podcasts don't go 8 episodes or 10 episodes or whatever the number is. It's a really low number, I've always thought. But I can certainly see, you have these grand plans and you want to engage, much like probably you have done with other podcasts that you listen to.
Yep.
all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put out, and you put out your product to crickets. I mean, that's all you hear. And sure, all the work, all the time and effort, and you have no noticeable feedback or engagement. Yeah, you get discouraged and you're like, yeah, okay, I'm going to do something else, or I'm not going to do anything at all,
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I have been cattail in my face.
Yes.
How many times I've been in that very situation where I spend a lot of time on one particular episode, and the whole time I'm putting it together, it's like, oh,
this is the
wait
one.
for people to hear this. They're gonna love it because it's so good and it's great. And there's all this crazy stuff I'm doing, and then I put it out there to nothing, to just silence. And that's the way it is, right? That's the way it is currently. If I'm thinking of particular episodes. If I had released episodes like that back in 2007 and 2008, I know I would get emails and replies to forum posts and stuff talking about it, but
it'd have been a whole different thing.
And, I did a whole episode about it over on Just Another Fanboy a month or two ago about engagement and blah, blah, blah. And, one of the things I said in that episode is like, I don't do it either. I don't email my favorite podcasts every time they put out an episode. I don't tweet about my favorite. It's just, I don't know. I don't know if it's because there's just so many of them that we all listen to now that the idea of commenting after every episode of every podcast we like.
That you like, yeah. Well, and think about this. Is it even possible for a podcast to come out like Comic Geek Speak did and do what they did in like their first 5 years anymore? I mean, is that even possible?
I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. It's not possible unless you're a celebrity.
Right.
Because you see celebrities who just put out I'm going to do a podcast, especially during COVID. And of course they get tons of listens off right off the bat because they're
built-in fan base.
Yeah, exactly. So the only way you're going to see success like that out of the gate is if you have a built-in audience that's going to follow you on over. And
that's
good
for them, but that doesn't help us. Low country. I call it low country. What do you call it? You say poor? No,
low rent.
Just everyday schmoes like the Comic Geek Speak guys. Some smallish town in Pennsylvania where they all know each other, and they start sitting around because they thought, oh yeah, this concept of podcasts, that sounds like pretty cool stuff. We sit around and talk, so let's just record it and put it out. Nowadays it'd be like, you're who? You're doing what?
Exactly.
Yeah. So
I used to tell Simon that all the time when he was a lot younger and he wanted to be a YouTuber. I tell him, I said, well, honestly, you have to find something that nobody else is doing that everybody wants, but they just don't know it yet. And that's hard to, nobody, I don't think anybody who has ever gotten big on places like YouTube or through podcasting, unless again, they had a built-in audience. I don't think they literally sat down and went, okay, here's a market that is untapped. That is what I shall podcast about. And then they got huge. It's just, hey, I want to do a podcast. I remember when I was going to start podcasting back in the day, I remember talking to my wife and I said, well, I want to start podcasting, but I don't know what to talk about. I love Monty Python. I could talk about Monty Python, but I can't imagine how I would even design a show out of that. I said, I listen to a lot of comic book podcasts. And she goes, well, do a comic book podcast. You love talking about comics. Just do that. I was like, okay. And that's what I did.
Got you through for a handful of years until life kind of kicked you in your chops and said, okay, that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Having 3 very small children, one that's practically a newborn, is not a good time to start a podcast.
No, your time is quickly running out as far as having any of your own in that situation, for sure.
All right. I'm really excited about talking about these two stories, especially the first one, because it was crazy.
Yep. I'm ready to go anytime you are. Yeah, let me start my...
Yeah, I gotta start my Audacity.
Audacity. Testy, testy, testicle. Yep. Okay. And if there's anyone out there listening, you haven't commented, so we don't know you exist.
Yeah, what the hell?
I think, Steven, you can see if there's anybody watching.
Well, yes and no. I have a little thing on the screen with an eyeball with a number next to it, and that's supposed to represent how many people are watching live. But I know that has been at 0 while we're getting comments from people who are watching. So I don't...
Okay. Can't rely on that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's got a very serious delay on it or what. I don't know.
Now, this is going through on YouTube only. This isn't Facebook or Insta or any of the others.
No, I don't. To use that word again, low rent. We're using the free version, and I think you can only do it through one platform.
Okay.
Yeah. And YouTube is still the leading viewing platform. So
yeah, I do not... I make it a point to not listen, quote unquote, to anything on YouTube, because it's not designed to just listen. You know, it's got it's a video component, and I'm sitting at work working. I can't look at the books that you're trying to show me. So if you're gearing what you're saying to the fact that I'm seeing what you're seeing, I can't do that. So I don't.
Yeah, they do have a podcast option through YouTube now, mainly for people who use YouTube Music.
Oh, okay.
And want to start listening to podcasts. And you know, with all my shows, I've always created a static video for each episode, which ultimately, you know, there may be a little thing at the front, little, you know, Steven or else media thing at the front, but most of it is just a static image throughout the entire episode. It's designed to be listened to, not watched. But I don't know how long ago a year, 2, 3 years ago, they've hooked it up to where you can now start your podcast using your RSS feed. So when I update when I put up a new podcast, it'll go there. I don't have to put the video together. It just slaps the podcast artwork up as the static image and
then runs it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I have converted Hither Came Conan to that model. And the only downside, the thing I like about podcasting and the RSS feed is if, you know, I need to fix something in an episode, or I want to add something or take something away, I can do that. I can upload a new version of the episode and it'll change on all the platforms, except that YouTube feed. You have to actually go in and delete the episode and re-upload the new version through the RSS feed. It's real dumb. So I am going to convert the Superman Super Show to the RSS feed version, so I don't have to make any more videos, because it's just an extra step. But because I'm kind of going in right now and just updating all the episodes with the new theme song and junk,
right,
I'm going to wait until that whole thing is done. You know, I may take another month or two, and then, because I just do it when I have a chance, you know,
right.
Not in any big hurry. But once that whole project is done, then I'll convert it all over to the RSS feed. And the only video I have to worry about is this one.
Yep.
And I don't really have to do much with this one. Just show up and talk. You know, I have my Monster Energy drink.
Okay.
My iced coffee.
Oh, okay. 2 fisting.
And a bottle of water, you know, to balance it out.
No doubt. Yep. To rehydrate after
Put
the
all
other 2.
3 of them. To fight it out in my stomach. All right. I'm recording. You're recording. We'll get this sucker started.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out proper mic placement so it doesn't get my poppy peas, my plosives. Ooh, I found another
I've got mine over here, just off the camera.
Yeah, I thought of that. Just
off to the side. See, let's see. There it is, Blue Yeti.
I kind of like to be right up against that microphone. It makes me feel better, and it gives me that bass in my voice that sounds oh so good.
You can bring them in close at night while they're driving home.
We can do an NPR style podcast. Talk about Superman.
Everybody with the microphone right.
All right. We'll try. Yeah, we'll try it here.
Okay.
For the time being. All right. So the following episode was recorded. See, I kind of want to lean toward it. Is the problem?
Yeah. Oh no! Wait. I'm gonna
put it back.
Split the difference.
See, it shouldn't pick up your plosives unless you're speaking. I watched a whole video on it. How there's this diaphragm with these types of microphones. Yours is more of a, because you can do like almost a 360 recording with yours. You can choose that model,
right,
or that method. But these types, it's like, boom, it's right through the top. So as long as you're not speaking right through the top, it shouldn't pick up your plosives, and yet it still does. I'm trying to.
Well, plus you've got a screen on it. I don't have a screen on mine.
I've got that. I use this.
Oh yeah,
when I do the other podcasts, but this just gets in the way of seeing my beautiful face on video.
See, I'm trying to stay as old school garagey as I can. I mean, I've spent all of my budget I've ever spent on buying this Blue Yeti for podcasting. That's probably 90% of the money I've ever spent on doing it on one thing. So yeah,
that's like one of the top 5 mics that in podcasting popularity.
I like Yeti. So. Okay, can't talk about that, or we won't get started because we'll go down another road.
All right. The following episode was recorded in front of a live streaming audience on Saturday, October 19th, 2024. You're listening to the Superman Super Show, episode number 71, Mystery in Swasey Swamp. Hello and welcome to the Superman Super Show. I'm a host. My name is Steeven. And 1,000 miles over there to my right is another host, Mr. Ed Moore.
Howdy, folks. How's it going? All you folks listening or not listening or will be listening in the past, future, present, whenever.
Yay. How's things?
Not too bad. This past week, the weather turned more towards what you would expect from an autumn, upcoming winter kind of weather. It's been highs in the high 40s to low 50s, lows like freeze warnings at night.
Yep.
Frost warnings. And that is the kind of weather I prefer. A lot of my personally being a fat boy, I prefer cooler weather. I'll just say that too. But a lot of my personal memories of goodness and happiness and stuff always seem to occur in the fall, winter times. Yeah. So that's comforting when any given year kind of enters that realm also.
Yep. Yeah, I prefer this time of year as well. We had our first freeze warning this week, so we've officially kicked on the furnace. It's not on right now because yesterday it got up into the mid 70s, and it might do that again today. So, it gets cold at night. It gets down to near freezing at night, and then up to high 60s, mid 70s, and then back down. That's what Kansas does this time of year.
It's really cold when you first wake up in the morning, but if you do anything, it's going to get warm enough during the day that it'll get hot. So you don't want to do anything then. And yeah.
So it's like we kick the furnace up a little bit before we go to bed so that we don't wake up to super cold. But it's a nice thing about working at home is, at some point in the morning I can get up and just turn it off.
Right. Yeah. Right. You can just handle it and not. Yeah.
Of course, if you got one of them smart houses with them smartphones, you can do that from anywhere.
Whatever. I guess. I only see that on TV. I don't think it exists. Like a lot of things, I don't think it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we talked about the weather. That is a major banter category.
Yes, that is. Yes, that definitely qualifies as banter.
I was going to talk about a podcast I've been listening to, but now I can't remember which one it was because I've been listening to so many lately.
Was it the history one that you mentioned? The history of the 90s?
History of the 90s. No, I just started that one.
Oh, okay.
I'm not deep enough into it to really form an opinion on it just yet.
Right.
I started listening to that one at the same time as I started listening to one about the 80s. And I got about 15 minutes into the one about the 80s and was just like, nah, this dude, no, I can't take, he's just, no, can't take him. He's just very monotone talking about stuff. And it's like, no, he's talking about some very nostalgic things, but couldn't do it.
That's just fine. You know, they're not all made for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. There are people that love that kind of stuff. You know, you start to get in any way excited or over the top or silly, and people are like, I can't listen to that nonsense. You know, so I have been listening. There's a guy who does a bunch of podcasts. His name is Lindsey Graham, and he's not the politician.
Oh, okay.
And his website is actually, his website is actually notthatlindseygraham.com. And, but he does a lot of history podcasts. He does the Daily History Podcast, American History Tellers, American Scandal. And then one that he did before the last election that he brought back was, Americans. Now I can't remember. It's all about elections.
Okay.
It's each episode is starting from the very first election going up to the last election. That's each episode. So it's really interesting because the whole concept is he's like, you know, it seems like if you look at politics now and elections, you just think, oh my God, it's gotten so crazy. It's gotten so crazy and over the top. How did our country get to this? And it's like, it's always been like this, buddy.
Oh, okay.
You know, let me tell you some stories.
You just didn't pay attention then.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's pretty good. I'm actually up to the first post 9/11 election between GWB and I think John Kerry.
That'd be what, 2004?
Something like that. Yeah. Kind of right here.
Because 2001, right, was 9/11. So
American Elections, Wicked Game is the name of the podcast. Yeah, 2004.
Okay.
Bush versus Kerry. And the one thing that struck me the most about this episode is they play a clip of Bush's big post 9/11 speech, like right after 9/11 happens. And it's very, it's very serious. It's all about the people who died and the, all that stuff and the families and blah, blah, blah. And because of Will Ferrell and his George W. Bush impression, I cannot hear the real George W. Bush speak without picturing Will Ferrell. I guess I never realized how good that impression was.
Okay.
Because, he doesn't, I mean, I guess he kind of looks like George W. Bush, but he's he's big and tall, and Bush is not big and tall. I don't know. I'm listening to him speak in this episode, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying not to laugh because all I can picture, I could just picture Will Ferrell going strategery, just saying those crazy words and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. Because there's some podcasts. If you like history, check those out. The Legends of the Old West, the guy who does that and his other show, Infamous America, he's doing Mountain Men over on Legends of the Old West. So I listened to Jedediah Smith and Hugh Glass. And over on Infamous America, he just wrapped up his season about the Zodiac Killer, which was pretty good. He's got one, I'll tell you what, it's weird. He's got one season on Infamous America where he talks about a bank robbery in the 90s that was just this, it was in California West Hollywood. I think it's called the West Hollywood bank robbery. The two guys who committed the robbery were just these big weightlifters, and they came in body armor and automatic weapons and held the police at bay in this big shootout for hours. And I've listened to that season at least twice. There's just something about it that I keep going back and listening to it because it's the way he breaks it all down over like 4 or 5 episodes. It's really good. Cool. It's a really good story. Okay, I think we're bantered out. That was way too much banter.
No, not at all.
We've reached our banter quotient.
Is it okay? Limit the banter limit. The banter meter is pegged. So
the banter meter is in the red. It's almost off the thing.
We need to bring it back. Let it calm down a little bit.
We about buried the needle. All right, so today we're looking at Mystery in Swasey Swamp. The mystery has nothing to do with Patrick or his brother, whose name I can never remember, but who's
Sven.
Also an actor. What? Do you know his name?
Sven.
Is it? No, I don't think it's Sven.
No. Okay.
Sven Swasey. That's a great name, though.
Sven Swasey. Yeah.
I'm going to be really tempted when I'm editing this. Every time I say Swasey, I can't help but think in my head, there's a line from How I Met Your Mother where somebody sees Patrick Swayze in a restaurant and they go, "Crazy Swayze." And I'm going to fight my brain not to include that at any point in this episode.
Well, when you go to post, you can put a little clip of that at the end every time.
Crazy Swayze. Anyway, Swasey Swamp, The Mystery in Swasey Swamp is the third Superman story to appear in Superman #9. It was written by Jerry Siegel with art by Paul Cassidy. Superman #9 is a cover date of March/April 1941, but an on sale date of January 3rd, 1941. And that comes from Mike's Amazing World of Comics over at mikesamazingworld.com. And here's what happened in the story. Let's take a deep breath because this was a crazy one. Lois Lane is sent to investigate an electric disturbance near Swasey Swamp, while Clark is sent to check on Lamson Laboratories, which has received several threats. When Lois arrives at the swamp, only a man named Tom Jepson will take her into the swamp. They find a meteor there, and Lois is kidnapped by Jepson and some men clad in metal masks. Clark is shot at by a plane as he visits Lamson. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of that scene, and
it's true.
Clark is shot at by a plane as he visits Lamson, what a crazy name, at his lab. More metal-clad men appear and force Lamson to turn over the formula for W-142, a powerful new energy source. Superman stops the men and learns from Crawl, with a K, Crawl, who is Lamson's assistant and a crook, that Lois has been captured. Superman races to the swamp where he encounters the boss of the operation. The scientist uses a magnetic force against the Man of Steel, but Superman rescues Lois and the crook is crushed in the carnage. Superman brings in Jepson and turns the story in as Clark Kent. Ed, are you able to wrap your mind around this story?
Wow. This actually, I thought both of these stories that we read for this recording were the most complex as far as the narrative and storylines I believe that we have seen yet. And it seemed like, all of a sudden the first, because these are the third and fourth stories in one anthology, Superman 9. Mm-hmm. The first and second stories were nowhere near this complex.
No, but they were still good, making Superman #9 an excellent issue.
Yes, I think the best issue of the book so far.
Yeah.
But yeah, just all of a sudden, they were the more typical kind of stories for 1 and 2. And then all of a sudden 3 is this back and forth. And then 4 is the same thing, just with slight, different names and different locations. And I'm like, man, what happened in the middle of putting together this issue that the story design changed so much?
They're 13 pages was just not enough to, I don't want to say they were not enough pages to tell the story, because I'm kind of glad they were able to do it in 13 pages because that made it a bit more crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like they've tried to fit so much in those 13 pages. And we've seen it before. We've seen them really try to fill those 13 pages. But I think this one, yeah, they took it to a whole new level. And probably the whole time we're thinking to themselves, man, if only we had 22 pages to work.
Yeah, really. We should have cut one of the stories and made one extra long. And yeah. But yeah, I mean, the way this starts out, you have we see two scenes. And then in essence, it comes together with Lois and Kent being separate. One going to check out one scene and one going to check out the other. And then in the midst of that, we have one scene resolve. And because that scene resolved, Superman has to go to the other scene. And it just, it was very, very complex. It wasn't complicated, I didn't think, but it was very complex.
Yeah, there were a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
And let me see if I can try to take everybody through this tale in a succinct way. But we start out in a place called Rovertown, which is a great name, at the Lamson Laboratories. And do we ever get Lamson's first name? I feel like they only call him Lamson throughout this entire story.
Yeah, no, not that I saw. It was always just the last name.
So we get these two scientists. They're in the laboratory. They're doing their experiments. One guy is pouring stuff from a beaker into another beaker and smoke's coming off of it. And they're talking about how Lamson has been receiving threats regarding his W142 formula. And they're being, Lamson doesn't respond to threats. He's a tough guy. And then suddenly one of the scientists is just gunned down in the laboratory. We don't see who does it. We just see a hand come from off panel, blam, shoots him down. And then a part of the plant, they don't call it a laboratory at that point, but that evening, a portion of the plant explodes. So right away, not even off the first page, and it's really half a page because they devote half the page to the kind of the teaser on what's going to happen.
Which actually does have something to do with the story.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not going to try to read that. I'll flub it all up. But we see the metal men, which just look freaking weird. There's just something unfinished about their face plates that just make them look super weird. But cop shows up on the scene and we get our first A of the story. So they tried to get the formula from the safe, eh? And so that's what the explosion was. Somebody trying to blow up the safe to get the formula. We then go hundreds of miles away on the border of Swasey Swamp, this small little town where all their electronics are going all hooey. Some kind of electrical disturbance. Some guy goes up to the proprietor of a dry goods store. May I use your telephone, please? Won't do you any good. None of the telephones hereabouts have been in order for a week. And so that's when we get to the planet. Right away, we get a sad little version of Clark, who his first speech of the entire issue, you know, Lois, last night I dreamed that you and I were on the best of terms. To which she responds, it must have been a dream. That's so sad. Makes me feel for old Clark. But they're ushered into Mr. White's office. Jimmy? That's the bow tie boy who retroactively becomes Jimmy Olsen. So they're both given these two assignments. Lois is to go to Swasey Swamp to find out what's going on with the electrical disturbances. And Clark is to go to Lamson. It's a hard word. Lamson Laboratories to find out what's up with this W142 formula and all the threats against the guy. Lois arrives out at Swasey Swamp. Let's kind of tell Lois a story first. Nobody will take her out into the swamp, but a stranger arrives who nobody in town knows. And his name is God, what was his name? Tom Jepson.
Tom Jepson. Mm-hmm.
He just arrives on the scene. I'll take you out into the swamp. And these other people who live in the town are like, we don't even know you. We've never seen you around here before. You don't want to go out into the swamp with this guy. How does he know his way around? And Lois is like, whatever. Nobody else will take me. I'll go with him. There's a very creepy moment between the two of them on the rowboat where she asks Jepson, how long will it take us to reach the center of the swamp? And his response is, maybe a few hours, maybe never. And she does not respond to that in any way. That I think I'd be like, you can just drop me off over here.
Right here on this mound. I'll just get off right here.
But she's listening to a portable radio. She gets a lot of static.
That's a big ass radio to be carrying around too. Yeah. Let me just say that, that's as big as a smaller piece of luggage, but yet she's just toting it around so she has a radio.
It's a boom box, in the 80s, they were meant to be that big so they could be cool looking. But back then it's like, that's as small as they could get them.
Yeah. That's as small as they could make them.
But they reach a meteor that has formed an island in the swamp, a meteor that's big enough to form an island, but didn't cause the extinction of everybody on Earth when it crashed into Earth. So
I don't know. Okay.
Not a lot of scientific research done on this story.
No,
but and I love the way that they make it look like a meteor. It's got all these little freaking craters on it,
circle craters.
Yeah. So anyway, they get to the meteor and immediately Jepson attacks Lois. She runs from him, and that's where she comes up against these men in the metal suits and the strange, I don't know if you'd want to call them gas mask like face plates. They got goggles, but then these little tubes that come out for their mouths. They're really strange looking. And I don't think we ever really learn why they're wearing them, except for maybe because of the radiation that's coming off of the. Well, but they wear them in the lab as well, which is 100 miles away. So I don't know.
That's what you would think, perhaps. It must be some sort of radiation suit, but there's never any talk of any radiation. The only radiation that we know of is magnetic force. Yeah. And so I'm like, so do they wear the suits that make them magnetic neutral so that the magnetic waves don't affect them while they're walking around or whatever?
I don't know. It's just like I guess it's their stormtrooper outfits, basically.
Yes. Yeah. We don't know. The we don't knows are piling up rather rapidly here so far.
And the only reason I brought up that they might be gas masks is only because of the visuals here on the page where they're chasing her around this island. Because there appears to be a cloud of smoke in the background, but it's never referenced. She does pass out, but they distinctly say that she faints.
Right.
So I just assumed before I started reading that they popped, like some kind of gas canister. And, if there was no text at all on this page, you would assume that they gassed her and that's why she passed out. But no, it's just a artistic choice for the background, I guess. And she passes out and Jepson gets on his radio to, report in that Lois Lane has been captured. And then we see the mysterious bad guy say, "Indeed, then it only remains for us to remove Clark Kent." Let me ask you this before we go any further. There's a point in this story where somebody references the leader saying that he is a genius. Did you assume that it was going to turn out to be a certain somebody?
I thought, I was like, oh, cool. That'll be cool if, this is the comeback for that character.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why we're dancing around it. But yeah, Luther. I thought it was Luther. And if not Luther, maybe somehow the ultra humanite has come back.
Okay.
But no. Very disappointing.
Not even remote references to either one.
No.
Yeah.
And it turns out to be basically nobody.
Yeah.
This guy. But so then we go to Clark Kent. He arrives in Rovertown. As soon as he gets off the train, a little messenger boy, starts calling out, "Message for Clark Kent. Message from Mr. Kent." Clark's like, I'll take that message, boy, is what he tells the kid.
Mm-hmm.
And he finds that the message is blank. But then we get this crazy panel of some stranger with these intense, crazy eyes. It's supposed to represent this is a guy in the crowd who now knows that's Clark Kent. But again, without text, I would assume he's trying to hypnotize somebody.
Something, yeah. Maybe he's putting the whammy on Clark to follow him better or something.
The intensity in that face and those eyes and the motion lines coming off the eyes and the almost energetic yellow color that's coming off of the face looks like he's doing the whammy on somebody.
Now, you said crazy eyes. The narrator tells us they are enigmatic eyes.
Enigmatic eyes, yeah.
Enigmatic, yeah.
Same thing. Enigmatic is the rich person's crazy.
Is that what? Okay, it's a synonym for crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you've got money, you're not crazy. You're enigmatic. You're mysterious.
All right.
So the laboratory is within walking distance of the train station, so Clark sets off to walk when suddenly an airplane swoops out of the sky and starts shooting at Clark. Clark, of course, being Superman, it's not going to hurt him, but he has to pretend that he is running for his life, and he yells, "Help!" And he runs to the lab. He runs to the front door. He starts beating on the front door. "Open, please open the door." This was the moment when, as I'm sitting here thinking, this story is freaking crazy. Then this happens, and I went, holy shit, they just took it to a whole new level.
Yeah, no doubt.
He's pounding on the doors. The doors open sideways like an elevator. They open up just enough for somebody to stick their hand through the opening. They've got a pistol in their hand. They shoot Clark, and then the doors close. But that's not the crazy part. The crazy part is Clark goes, huh, and starts knocking on the door again. Somebody else answers the door, and they're like, "I heard a shot. Were you harmed?" And Clark's like, "Just let me in and I'll let you know." And so when he gets inside, he's like, "Oh yeah, the door opened and somebody took a shot at me, but they missed." And the guy's like, "Wow, that's crazy." I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand, because within moments, knock, 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 shot, 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 knock, knock, knock. Oh, is there somebody out here shooting?
Yeah, did somebody shoot at you?
I surely probably passed them at the door, but no. So yeah, Clark's now in the lab. I think this guy is, oh no. Okay. So this guy is Crawl,
Mm-hmm.
Lamson's assistant, Krawl. And he meets Lamson, and then suddenly the airplane is back, and Clark runs off, changes into Superman. The airplane lands outside the laboratory. The dudes in the metal suits come out. They come bursting in. "We want the W142 formula." And the Lamson's like, "No, what are you going to do? Kill me?"
No,
you're not going to get it if you kill me. So there's really nothing you can do. I mean, they could torture him, I suppose, but so they go, "Oh, all right, well, we'll just work on somebody else." And I guess that's Krawl they go up to.
I think so. Yeah. It's the only two men I think that are there. So
yeah, but Krawl was, well, he wasn't fully bald. Anyway, the guy turns his gun around and threatens to bash the dude's head in with his gun, the butt of his gun, if he doesn't tell him where the formula is. And it's just there in the cabinet drawer. They didn't even need to threaten anybody. They just needed to start opening drawers, and they would have found it.
Well, see, now that does look like Lamson.
It does, yeah. So maybe they're like
the suit and the hair. So they're going to shoot him, and he's like, "No, shooting doesn't scare me." Well, then we'll bash your head in. Okay, that scares me. And
that's really the only explanation here, because they do mention when he's like, "You're not going to get anything out of me. You're wasting your time." One of them says, "I believe him. Let's work on someone else." But then I guess the other guy's like, "No, screw this. I'm going to bash your freaking head in if you don't tell us where the formula is." And he's like, "Yeah, it's there in the drawer." Which, again, all they had to do was just start opening random drawers, and they would have found it. Yeah.
Toss in the office, and they would have found what they're looking for.
Yeah, it's not in a hidden safe. It's not hidden anywhere. It's just casually tossed in a cabinet drawer. But it's at that point that Superman bursts in. They he manhandles him, he throws him around. But then they switch on this weapon that is in the airplane, but controls the magnetism in the room that they're in. And it basically makes every metal object in the room fly at Superman. Superman realizes that the machine that's doing this must be in the airplane. So he picks up a huge metal bench, throws it through the window. It destroys the plane. Machine is now turned off. No more magnet stuff. So that's when Crawl decides that he's going to jump out the window. And Superman goes to save him.
That was not a very well drawn airplane, by the way.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, that was yucky.
Yeah. Superman goes to save him, which just involves Superman getting to the ground first and catching him, because really, as long as you're caught in a pair of arms and you don't hit the ground, you're going to be fine.
Right. You're safe. Yeah.
Yeah. But the guy swallows poison. On the way down, he swallows poison. And he tells Superman, it doesn't matter. I swallowed the poison. So Superman, well, tell me who your real employer is. And that's when he says, a man of gigantic intelligence. You'll never outwit him. And that made me and Ed and probably everyone reading this story for the first time go, yeah, Luthor's back.
That was kind of exciting there. Yeah.
Yeah. So Superman leaps into the air, and through a series of mighty leaps spanning hundreds of miles, which he's only 100 miles away.
He can't fly. So
yeah, he can't. But while he's in one of his leaps, he looks down and he sees the metal clad men. And so he decides that's where he needs to land. So while he's in midair, he manages to land next to those guys. He beats them up. He finds out that there's an underground hideout. He burrows down, breaks into the room, meets the leader, who turns on another one of those magnet machines, causing the whole room basically to implode.
Mm-hmm.
But Superman fights his way out, saves Lois. And Jepson survives, Tom Jepson, but the leader does not. So we get in one word balloon who the leader was. Who was your boss? Superman asked Jepson, and he says, a foreign agent who was determined to get the W-142 formula at any cost. And I should probably back up. They did explain what the W-142 formula was, and it's an energy source that would basically make it so you could get, what was it, like the same amount of energy you would get out of 1 million pounds of coal, 5 million pounds of coal come out of just one piece of coal.
1 pound of this W-142, 1 pound would produce the amount of energy that 5 million pounds of coal would.
Yes. And so they take Jepson. Superman takes Lois and Jepson back to Metropolis. They find Sergeant Casey, who's now our reoccurring police officer in Metropolis, and hand him over. Said, I got a prisoner for you. And Casey's like, what? And Lois is like, hold on to him, Casey. I'll explain everything to you later. And then we get our last two panels at the Daily Planet. Lois is really excited because she's got this great story. She turns it in and finds out, sorry, we already have the story. And she looks at the front page and sees that it was my story under the byline of Clark Kent. That's the last panel of the page. Clark is now poking his head into the office through the doorway, and he says, paging me, Lois? And that's the end.
He's got to know that
Right.
constantly doing things like that is not going to make her like him, on top of any other reason that she might not like him.
And he does actually work when y'all get to the next episode, we talk about the fourth story in this Superman issue. He kind of talks about that just slightly, but it's more about him being Superman, but we'll get there. They don't really tell us how the meteor in Swasey Swamp tied into any of this, did they?
No. Maybe the meteor has been there for like a long time, and it was just a discovery rather than something that recently fell.
And were the bad guys using the meteor at some point as a home base, Meteor Island? I don't understand.
I guess so, because all of them came from there.
Yeah, that's true.
Any reference came from the meteor. The dudes wearing the suits that we saw at the meteor attacked the laboratories. They were dressed the same, so they must have come from there. Now, I would like to know how they managed to get to the plane dressed like that, because the meteor's in the middle of a swamp. A plane is not going to take off from a swamp. They're on land somewhere at a runway, whatever. So these dudes like just transport in these outfits, and then they just climb aboard their plane in the hangar and take the plane. I mean, just why a plane? What? Yeah, it just
you're just speechless.
There were just so many, the meteor. Why are they dressed in the suit? The plane attacks him, which you thought, Clark, him being Clark, you thought, well, that's what they're doing. They're looking for Clark to kill him. But no, actually, they were coming to land to dispatch people to go try to find this formula. Trying to kill Clark was just a plus at the time. They just happened to see him. And so it's not a regular plane, right, that you would just go from point A to point B. No, it's a fighter plane that can shoot. Right. Yeah. And so that's what they're doing to travel across our country in 1941 without interference. We'll call it a Spitfire, just zooming in the farmlands of, wherever between Lamson Labs and Swasey Swamp is this fighter plane. And nobody cares in 1941 that
they're strafing American citizens.
Yeah. Now I thought it was kind of interesting at the beginning, and we can't now, but it would be interesting for me to ask the writer, why did one of our duo go by bus and one by train? Is there a reason that you did both, or is that significant? Was one closer and so you could travel there by bus, whereas the one that was farther away, you went by train because it would be quicker?
Who took the bus?
Lois or Clark took the bus. Lois took the train. So, I thought it was curious that they used two different methods of transportation. But now, now that I say that, we see a train, we see a bus, we see a plane, we see a boat, we see walking. Clark walked. I'm not sure there was any method of transportation in 1941 that was left out. Horse. Yeah. Nobody rode a horse, I guess. But it just, you've got two settings. You split up our duo, and then you bring them together at one of the settings, and you find out the connection between the two settings. And it was a very complex story.
I don't know what I was going to say. I had something I was going to say, and it makes you wonder if they had been able to turn this into a 22-page story, if all those questions would have been answered.
Who knows? I mean, maybe they wrote it and they didn't have it answered to begin with. So 22 more pages wouldn't have, a full 22 pages wouldn't have given you answers because they didn't plan to give you any.
Yeah.
They would have just fleshed out a little bit, I don't know. So, something probably would have been answered with more room, but I don't think everything. To me, the biggest question I have is, why were they wearing those outfits at the Meteor?
why are they wearing the outfits at all?
Yeah, I don't just.
I mean, if the leader was wearing a similar outfit,
right,
or even like a Darth Vader versus stormtroopers, you get why the stormtroopers are wearing those clothes, because they're uniforms.
Right.
So are these uniforms for his soldiers? They don't explain it. They don't refer to those guys as anything but metal clad men or something. And so, if he would have even just put in something like the soldiers in their bizarre metal uniforms, then I would have been like, okay,
right,
that's what the soldiers wear.
It's their uniform, right?
Yeah, but
and the magnetic stuff, did it have anything to do with the meteor? Did they find it because of the meteor, or did the meteor hide the fact that they were doing these maybe experiments with magnetics? Or
I just don't know. That makes sense, but
I
just give us a couple of breadcrumbs, Jerry. Come on.
They dug out an underground base under the meteor.
Yeah.
Okay. In a swamp, I could understand. Nobody's going to mess with them in a swamp. So, okay, that kind of makes sense. Was the fact that it was underneath the meteor, did the meteor have something to do with that? Were they doing something with the meteor and they made their base there?
I mean, I guess if you're going to make a base underground, it's kind of hard to do in a swamp. So the meteor island left them a place to actually make an underground layer in. But there's really a lot left up to the reader's imagination in this story.
Yes, this would be a really good story for a contemporary writer to go back and retcon and fill in some of these answers as far as, one of Superman's earliest adventures and some kind of connection to today, and go back and look between the panels and fill in some of these spaces.
That would be fun.
It's just, wow.
You could, now this is one of those, we make the joke all the time. What would a modern writer do with this story? They'd probably turn it into 6 issues and be all blah, blah, blah. This could easily be made into a 6-issue story.
Absolutely.
And still full of adventure and fun.
Yeah, because there are so many questions from this one that additional books could easily fill in. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I yawned. And here's something that I'm wondering. I don't know if it's happened yet, but I know that we were getting close to this version of Superman falling under the Creative Commons. The
right.
trademark running out or something.
What he can do and the way he looks, and
I'm wondering if anybody now could tell this story.
I was going to say, they could latch onto this and retell this. Yeah, maybe. I don't know if you could, because I don't understand completely how the particular copyright works.
Yeah.
It could be that the story you can't mess with, but some of the concepts you can, or some, because I know that, a lot of people were like, oh, well, that means, and people with knowledge would step in and say, no, basically it involves the likeness of Superman, the S shield on this particular version, his powers. I don't think you could use Clark Kent. I don't think you can use Lois Lane, things like that, because those copyrights carry over. So it's, you couldn't refer to him as the Man of Steel, I don't think, because that's come up several times. You certainly couldn't use the word Superman.
No.
So, but good fun. And after the first 2 stories in this issue, to then open up the book and keep going with this story, this is an excellent issue of Superman so far.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, and this does tie into this issue or this story. Used to watch G.I. Joe back in the 80s, right?
The cartoon, yes.
Mm-hmm. Have you watched it recently? Have you gone back and done any kind of rewatches?
No.
So the thing about G.I. Joe is that I never really noticed it as a kid, but watching it again as an adult, that show is just full of music. Mm-hmm. There's always background music being played. And there's a certain bit of background music that's played during some of the more action-packed scenes.
Okay.
It's like this, just this really bombastic, exciting music. And reading this issue, that music could have been played almost throughout the entire issue, because it's just, there's just so much action from page 1 on. And just and it's with G.I. Joe, it's almost overwhelming at times in the background. It's like, I can't even concentrate on the action because the music is so intense.
Too much input.
And yeah, that's kind of what I feel like with this issue. It was a freaking ball. And I don't want to go on record as saying this is my favorite Superman story so far from the beginning. I don't even want to go on the record as saying this is the single craziest Superman so far, because I'm having memories of the story about the orphanage and Superman chasing the guy in the basement and all the crazy
underground torture, whatever that was. Yeah. That was...
So I almost have to go back and read that one and go, which one was the crazier story? But this one might win, because it was crazy.
Easily among the most crazy, and there's no problem saying it's among your favorites so far, or something like that.
Yeah,
just, at least that way you don't have to like actually sit down and pick. You can just say, it's one of these 3. It's one of the, so yeah.
But just going from Clark walking to the lab from the bus depot, having a military fighter plane strafe him
from out of nowhere,
just and him having to run to the lab and bang on the door for rescue, please, sanctuary, only for the doors to open up and a solitary hand holding a pistol comes out, shoots him point blank in the chest. And of course, being Superman, it doesn't hurt him, so he knocks on the door again. Somebody else is standing there. Was there a gunshot? I think
shots.
I have to assume that was Krull was the guy who shot him.
I guess, and he's just playing off the fact that he did it. And I mean, did he actually think, if that was him, did he actually think at that range that he missed who it was out there?
Right.
Or
that's what I'm wondering, is because, he shoots him, closes the doors, and then Clark starts pounding on the door again. Is Krull like, what the flip? I just shot that guy. I'm really curious. I should probably open up the door. And he opens up the door and sees he's not shot. So what do I do? Was there a gun? Did I hear a gunshot?
Yeah. I'll just play it off and just keep going. And I don't know.
These are the stories that I love to talk about, because there's just they're crazy, and there's so many questions that never get answered.
And for me, at this point in my comic book reading, I am perfectly okay with that. Now, once upon a time, it would have had to make sense, and it would have had to left maybe 1 or 2 questions about the overall story, not 15 questions throughout the story. I could not allow that at one point, but now I'm like, okay.
Same thing, same way.
That's the way they wrote it. That was fun. Yeah, I wonder. They didn't answer. Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, 20, 30 years ago, I may have been like, this didn't make any sense. It's stupid.
It's stupid, man. Yeah.
Now it's just like, this didn't make any sense. It's stupid. I love it.
That's okay. That's okay.
Anything else you want to say about this?
No, I think I'm good. This was a lot of fun so far.
Okay. Yeah. This is the reason we do this show. Stories like that.
This is it. This is an example of why we are entertained by Golden Age Superman. This story.
All right, folks. That was one of the more craziest Superman tales in existence. Well, since the beginning, at least.
Yes.
I'm sure there's some crazy stuff happening in the Silver Age.
Yeah, I think so. In a little bit different way, but just as crazy feeling.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that before. It's like the craziness of the stories of the Silver Age were crazy on purpose. Whereas here they're just trying to write a story.
Yeah.
And it just comes out crazy because they've only got 13 pages. And some of the concepts that would have been, I guess,
settings and two characters, and they've got to connect them, and 13 pages to do all that. So yeah.
Yep. All right, well, let's wrap this sucker up. Until next week, folks. I am Steven. That's Ed, and this was the Superman Super Show. Bye.
Ciao, Bella.
Oh my goodness! Let me save this, and then I'm going to run to the restroom.
I've asked before. Do you prefer MP3 or WAV for these?
I prefer waves.
WAV, okay. I kind of thought that, but for some reason it wouldn't come into mind.
There we are. There's the file. Okay. Oh. This was 71. Okay, that's saved, folks. We're going to take a short break while Steven has a potty.
Booyah to anybody out there.
Okay. I should put together some kind of little sign or something I can put up on the screen between, we take a break. We will be right back, folks. Because can you imagine? I'm going to finally check out this live stream, and it's just, there's nobody there.
The 8 people that we had check in all checked in at that time. Yeah. You put up some kind of like Monty Python placard. Those are always entertaining.
Yeah.
All right, let's get this going. Ow, hello. Okay.
I am recording.
As am I. As am I.
Whenever you're ready.
All right. You're listening to the Superman Super Show, episode 72, Jackson's Murder Ring. Hello and welcome to the Superman Super Show. I'm a host. My name is Ed. And 1,000 miles over there to my left is another host, Mr. Steven Orr.
Hello.
Hello. And hopefully we will answer the question, who the heck is Jackson? Because that's kind of a big deal as far as the title of this story.
Yeah, and without giving anything away at all, it wasn't till I got to the end of the story and was putting the show notes together, and I put that title in Jackson's Murder Ring, that I kind of went, oh, that title has two meanings. Kind of,
yeah. I sat there for several minutes trying to piece together on the last, I guess it would be page or maybe 2 pages, the 3 dudes and the color suits and who did what and said what and Superman did what, and
yeah.
I have a little chart here. Again, this is a story that had 2 parts, and so you keep up with one part, and then the other part comes in, and you got to see how the parts connect, and it's like big bulletin board with things tacked onto it, and yarn, connecting the thumbtacks as you do all these. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, sometimes the coloring just makes it almost impossible just to, separate the different characters. It's like, just put a hat on one of the guys,
Yeah, something, or make none of them have facial hair, but one has a mustache, or just something to make it easy to tell them apart. But they do it to some extent, but I don't think they do it as well as they could.
Yeah. So I got a little bit of banter.
Okay.
For our official banter segment. When the first, they got the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power show on Amazon Prime.
Mm-hmm.
And we got Amazon Prime for a couple of months back when the first season started.
Okay.
I think they were doing a deal, like your first 3 months for so much a month, and then it goes up to regular price after that.
Right.
But I watched the full season each week as the episodes were coming out, and I really enjoyed it. I really dug the show. It was really good. And I used the time to get all caught up on the Reacher show.
Yes.
And
another good one.
Jack Ryan, that show.
Another good one. Yeah.
So then we canceled Prime.
Okay.
Season 2 of Rings of Power starts up, and I tell everybody, I'm like, all right, so as soon as all of the episodes of this season of Rings of Power are up, we're going to, when it comes time to pay for one of our other streaming services, we're going to cancel that for a month, and we're going to do Prime for a month so I can get caught up. And so that's what I do. And I sit down the other day and I start watching. I decided I'm going to watch the first season over again.
Okay.
And I start watching the first season, and it starts out with a couple of commercials, which a lot of times they do anymore. But then 20 minutes into the show, there's an ad break. And I was like, did I pay for the service that gives you ad? Do I need to upgrade? And I'm looking all over, and from what I can tell, if you're doing Amazon Prime, you're getting ads, period. There's not an option to go up a level to do no ads.
Yeah, and I've not seen that for Prime either.
I just find that really weird that they wouldn't even give you the option. It's like originally that was the purpose of the streaming services, right? So you could stream the stuff. You're paying for the service. There shouldn't be ads. And then one or two of them said, you know what? Let's go ahead and do ads, but we'll offer a higher tier so you can not
ad free.
Yeah. And that makes sense, because even cable, which you had to pay for, you got commercials. So it's not like it's a foreign concept for me, but for Amazon Prime to then go, you know what? I think we're going to do ads too, but screw all those guys who don't want ads. You're just going to have to deal with it. We're not going to give you the option to pay a higher price.
Well, but just think, remember all the way back to terrestrial TV, you had the offer of cable so that there were those aspects of terrestrial TV you didn't have to deal with. So you get cable instead. Well, you got cable. So then to avoid those things cable is doing, you get satellite. Well, now to avoid those things that terrestrial and cable and satellite are doing, you get streaming. And now streaming does, I mean, it just follows. They say that they won't, they get people to subscribe, and then either they lied to begin with, or they find out that their business model doesn't work without that. So then they do that also. And it just, that is something, when we first started playing with streaming, I noticed every time, here, do this because it's not like that, you know, but then eventually, well, it gets to be just like that.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, I distinctly remember back in the day watching MTV, and one of their news stories came on, and they were talking about the advent of the compact disc.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they were showing, you can now get these in stores, and they came in the long cardboard packages with the CD up on top, and then the rest was just air for some reason. And they specifically said in that news story that the record companies have announced that, they're converting all their artists over to CDs, and this is the price point that they will be for now. And after a couple of years, the price will go down once CD becomes the norm.
You're paying for the new technology, but eventually it won't be the new, and the prices will come down.
And while CD players, the prices did go down, CDs never. They may not have gone up with inflation, maybe, but they never went down in price.
No. You as an early adopter, you never got the benefit of the reduced price eventually.
Yeah.
Speaking of Amazon Prime, now you know that there is a second season of Reacher that should be available also.
Yes, I think I've watched the first 2 seasons. And I know that there's a 3rd season coming.
Yes.
And it's been renewed for a 4th season.
Exactly. So there's 2 Rings of Power, 2 Reacher. Now Jack Ryan has multiple seasons, but they've all dropped and it's gone. They're not going back to that. Yeah. So, which that last scene in the last episode of the last season of Reacher is one of the best scenes of TV that I have seen in a very long time, where he goes and confronts the senator.
Yes.
In the Senate hearing, because the senator was behind, and it's like, I know that you were behind it, and you know that you were behind it, but of course I can't prove it. But I'm letting you know that I know.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
It was. I mean, he just his balls were huge, and he supported it. It's like, yep.
That's what I always liked about Jack Reacher, and because I'm sure Tom Clancy was a conservative, just based on his subject that he wrote about and blah, blah, blah. But I always felt that Jack Reacher was kind of nonpartisan. He never took a side, Democrat or Republican or anything like that.
His side was right.
Exactly.
That was his line. Right and wrong was his line. Yeah.
That's what I always liked about the books. And it comes across on the show as well. So,
yep. Now, the movie that's got Tom Cruise in it.
The Reacher movie?
Yeah, the Reacher movie. The author of those novels is on record as saying, no, that's not Reacher. Reacher is, 8 foot tall and 4 foot wide and goes about 400 pounds. That's Reacher. So.
But what's funny about that is when the movie was doing its first rounds of publicity, he was saying something completely different.
Yeah, he was.
He had to support it.
Well, yeah, because he got money off of that.
Right. So at that point, he was saying, well, I know that Jack Reacher's like 6'2", 250 pounds, and Tom Cruise isn't physically the same size as Reacher, but Reacher he's like a force of nature, and Tom Cruise can really emulate being a force of nature. And it's like, all right. Okay.
And I don't necessarily disagree with that.
Yeah.
That character, the way it's portrayed, benefits by being portrayed by a smaller man in a different way than it benefits by being portrayed by a big giant of a man like it is on the TV series. So depending on how it's played, both ways can work for different reasons. Yeah. So that's okay. I like the series better than the movies, but
I do too.
It's just me.
I do too. I mean, the fact of the matter is, his size is part of the story. I mean, it's not something that they just happen to mention in the first book, that he's just a big dude. It comes up all the time.
Yeah. So, because he is. Everywhere he goes, he's a big, imposing dude. Yeah.
All right.
Ready to carry on, my wayward son?
Let's do this.
Alrighty, folks, today we're looking at Jackson's Murder Ring, which is the fourth and final Superman story in Superman number 9. And I say it that way because I haven't actually looked at the book to see if there's anything else in there. I don't think there is, but just in case, I'll leave that in there. This is written for us by Jerry Siegel with art by Paul Cassidy. And to catch you up, here's what happened. Investigating the death of Morton Carling brings Lois and Clark to the offices of Nelson and Lassiter attorneys. They're informed that Carling received death threats and was possibly killed by one of his 40 heirs. Clark and Lois question the heirs, but while doing so, Clark is kidnapped by some thugs. He's thrown from a car during a chase between the thugs and police, but he gets the telephone number of the crook's boss. Visiting the Jackson Jewel Company, where the call originated, Superman spots Jackson selling worthless jewels for large sums of money. Lois, also investigating, is caught by Jackson, forcing Superman to make a rescue. Lois recovers evidence that the Jewel Company is a front for a murder ring. Superman follows Jackson back to Nelson and Lassiter, who were responsible for Carling's death. The crooks turn on each other, but Superman rounds them all up, turning them over to the police. Now, I do want to add here, visiting the Jackson Jewel Company where the call originated. That's not where the call originated. That's where the call went.
Yep.
So, doesn't sound like a big difference, but as far as how Superman found out, it makes all the difference which way the call went. So,
yeah, I thought the way he memorized the phone number, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Very, very clever. It's been a long time since I've heard or dealt with a dial rotary phone. I don't necessarily know that I remember that it clicked the number of times for the number. Maybe it does. I thought it just almost like buzzed. You let it go. Yeah. Bzz, bzz, and I didn't know that there was
maybe the rotary phones they had in 1940.
Maybe they were connected to the actual digit and it did something. Yeah, I don't know, but still clever nonetheless. Okay, so looking at the story, we have the splash page here, or splash panel. Takes up about a third of the first page. Superman in a tussle here with about 5 different guys in an office, and he's just darting in from off panel, kind of taking the men on. Which is quasi a scene that happens, but not.
Yeah. Taken by itself, it looks like he's just like leaped into a random office to beat up office workers.
Yeah, but I think this scene actually has 3 people, right? I think. Because the dude with the cup. I think there were just 3 when the closest scene to this actually happens.
Yeah.
Okay, so we start out very morbidly. I thought this was probably as morbid as a Superman story has, definitely has started, maybe even has gotten since we've been reading them.
Yeah, it's dark.
But Lois and Clark are walking. Does it say they're going somewhere? They're just walking near Metropolis Towers. I don't know. They're walking downtown by an apartment building, and they see Clark sees and directs Lois's attention to someone falling. So Clark, runs away from the others or up towards the building or something. He separates himself a little bit. And as he does, he's looking at the dude falling, trying to figure out how as Superman he can do something and not give away Clark Kent's Superman. In doing that, he realizes via his telescopic vision that actually this isn't a dude falling. It's a dead body falling. So the dude's already dead. Well, goodness, that makes the decision up for Clark because he decides, I'll just let him hit anyways. So he runs over to Lois and kind of, cowers her so she's not exposed to this big sack of meat hitting the concrete from, what do we see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Or actually he tells us, doesn't he? What floor it is? Does he say the 10th floor? 20th floor, the legal firm of Nelson and Lassiter. So if that's where this dude fell from, he fell approximately 200 feet. At 63 feet per second squared. I remember that from my college days, which for those of you that don't understand mathematically what that means, for every 63 feet he falls, his speed, or the speed of an object in Earth's gravity, for every 63 feet it falls, its speed doubles. So in 200 feet, his speed has trebled at one point. So that's how fast, and that's anything falling in Earth's gravity. And so yeah, he did the wet bag of cement on the street there, and that supposedly is like the sound of what a body makes if it hit. Now,
Yeah.
you know, in movies and TVs, you don't see that very often. You see them fall on a car or fall on something. But yeah, it's been described as sounding like a wet sack of concrete when it hits a surface like the street.
Every once in a while, you'll catch a TV show or a movie where they have them actually hit the sidewalk. And it's like, if they hit a car, something like that, it's like, it's bad. It's always like, ugh. But when they just hit the ground like that, you're just like, oh
yeah.
And
it just,
so reading this, it's like all they put is the word thud, but that's, I heard in my mind, when I read thud, I heard the sound of a wet sack of cement hitting the ground.
Absolutely, yeah, because you knew what it was making that sound. Yeah, so it's
squelching.
Like, yeah, here, let me substitute my sound for that one. It's
it was just dark.
Yep.
As soon as I got to that point, because I'm like right there, like, oh, what's he gonna do? What's he gonna do? He's got to save this guy. How is he gonna save this guy? That's what I'm focused on. And the moment he goes, oh, he's already dead, I was like, oh shit, he's just gonna let him drop.
He's gonna leave. It's like, oh no. Yep. And
it's a whole range of emotions that I went through just from those two panels.
Yep. Which I can only assume is what they wanted you to.
Yeah.
Because the way it's set up and the way it's written, and so they're hanging out here. Or are they outside? Yeah, they're still outside. The police get there, and our favorite officer, Sergeant Casey, is one of the responding police officers,
wearing yellow hats.
Yeah,
it's an odd coloring choice.
So they check out the body. Casey checks out the body, and he says he's got a card. The dude's name is Morton Carling, but he has a Nelson and Lassiter card on him. And oddly enough, the main offices of Nelson and Lassiter are in this very building. They do a little investigating, find out on the 20th floor. So we have a dead body. He has a card on him from this office. In the same building, Lois and Clark decide to go up to that office and start asking questions there. Sounds reasonable to me so far. So they go up and they talk to Mr. Lassiter, one of the namesakes of the firm. And he's like, no, I know of Mr. Carling, but I didn't do anything with him. Ask my partner, Nelson. He handled Mr. Carling's affairs. So, okay. So the pass off there to the other named partner. And, you kind of see him think a moment. He says, well, perhaps you're right. During the last months, Carling continually complained that he was receiving death threats over the phone and from strangers who passed him on the crowded street. We complained to Sergeant Casey, but the sergeant, after investigating, decided our client had an overactive imagination. And then the other partner, Lassiter, comes in and says, he warned us to protect our client from suicide. He, I would imagine, is Sergeant Casey. Yeah. But today, he unexpectedly leapt through the window. So now we know that he was at their offices and he jumped out their window, right? So a little bit more of a connection. Whether you believe what the men are saying or not, whatever. That's what the rest of the story is for. But as far as Lois and Clark, they have some firm connections now. They can continue. Probably the best connections in an investigation that they have had in a very long time as far as connecting dots. They run out of dots after talking to the two men, but at least they were able to connect some, and they have a place to continue to investigate and research from this firm. Then who is it? Nelson tells them He was left a life insurance, or he was left a life interest in an estate of $20 million. So Carling got an inheritance of $20 million. Well, obviously, that's why he jumped out a window, because he had $20 million.
Yeah.
No, that's like, well, okay. Now that he has passed, 40 new heirs will each inherit $500,000. No explanation of how in the heck this man has 40 heirs. And I mean, are they related, or was it just written, these are people I worked with, or what?
Yeah, who knows?
But 40,
40.
Usually you'll see, 2, 3, 5, and they're all family, maybe cousins and stuff. But no, this is 40 heirs, and they don't say anything more than that.
Right. I don't know. I'm assuming the purpose of coming up with 40 heirs, of course, is that leaves a lot of suspects. And True. Lois has to go investigate 20 of them. Clark has to go investigate 20 of them. But we don't see them really. They could have said 10, and it would have had the same impact.
Well, they could have said a couple.
Yeah.
One is on this side of the country, and one is on that side of the country. And that would have separated them just as easily as anything else. I mean, ultimately, that's what they're wanting to do. Once again, they're wanting to send Lois in one direction and Clark in another.
Yeah.
So they do that. As Steven said, Lois takes 20 and Clark takes 20. And Clark whines about having to talk to 20 people.
He sure does.
Lois doesn't seem to bat an eye, but Clark's like, really, 20? In his best Jerry Lewis impression there. So we follow first Clark. He goes out, door slammed in his face, Well, when he gets done, he now realizes, I guess because he has time to not focus on what he's doing or what's next, but just to relax a little bit. He realizes that he is being tailed in a car as he's driving, I don't know, back to the paper, I guess, or maybe to try to pick up Lois or something like that. Who knows? But he's driving away from the last of the 20 people, 20 heirs that he talked to. And he gets run off the road by the car that's following him, smashing into a pole. And he uses that accident to feign being unconscious. So the men who are following him grab him unconscious, so they think, toss him in their car, and take off to their headquarters with this news hound interloper that's been talking to people that are related to the $20 million that obviously these two men have a hand in, they want, somehow they're connected.
And real quick, they make a point to point out that Clark is heavy. This guy is heavy. And so that makes me wonder, because every once in a while, not every time, and we don't see them do it in this issue, but when somebody like punches Clark in the chin, every once in a while they'll be like, man, it was like hitting a brick wall. Mm-hmm. And that combined with, bullets bounce off of him, knives break and blah, blah, blah. Is he just super dense? That's why he's heavy. And that's why his he's unbreakable.
He's invulnerable. Yep. Which now quickly, of course, being invulnerable has absolutely nothing to do with having super strength. They're two different powers. A lot of people think, well, if he can lift an elephant, he's invulnerable. It's like, no, you can still shoot him. Yeah. He can just lift an elephant. It's they're two different things.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is a strong dude, but I could stab him with a knife.
Yeah, right. He still has the same pitfalls that us regular humans do. He can just do the things we do while he's holding a car. It is the difference. Or could once upon a time. I don't imagine he could do that now, but so the two bad guys, the two thugs, I guess, get Clark into their headquarters, and a third thug who maybe not yet. This is just a nameless dude. We haven't gotten into any of the named people yet.
Yeah.
Another bad guy who's a little bit higher up than the two, but not as high as the dudes in charge. He's middle management in the thuggery operation here. He wakes Clark up by smacking him in the head. He pulls him by the head of his hair, pulls his head back, and smacks him with the other hand. which is funny. Clark was never unconscious to begin with, so he's playing this whole time. The smack does not knock his glasses off either, so it wasn't a very good smack. I don't think. More like a tap.
Yeah.
And so here Clark says, well, I know somebody murdered Carling, and I bet it was you guys. And so that's like the dude that woke him up says, well, that is probably the last thing you really wanted to say to us.
Yep.
So Clark was right. Obviously he was testing some waters, and yeah, these guys have something to do with it. We don't know for sure yet. They don't really let us know anything until later in the story. But this is obviously that they know something at the very least. Yeah. They know something that they don't want Clark to find out and tell anybody else is what I was getting from the story. So this dude that was beating up on Clark dials his boss. Turns out the boss is at the Jackson Jewelry Company. So that would probably make him Mr. Jackson that he's talking to. Now, this is something that I brought up at the top of the episode. Clark listens to this rotary phone and memorizes the clicks for the number that is being called. And then at a later point, matches that phone number up with where it went and finds out that the Jackson Jewelry Company was the destination of this call. So he, using his Superman powers, connects a couple more dots there. So the talking to Mr. Jackson, he tells the thugs who have Clark to get rid of him. He probably knows too much, and even if he doesn't know too much, who cares? Get rid of him. So that way we don't have to worry about it. So once again, they dump him in a car, and they're zooming around town, and they blow a stoplight. This is I'm glad this doesn't happen today. They blow a stoplight, and soon after, or at the time that they run the stoplight, they're seen by a couple police in a patrol car. One of them is, once again, our Sergeant Casey. Okay, now he is starting to get around quite a bit.
Yeah,
Sergeant Casey is. So Sergeant Casey and another patrolman see, we'll just say they see this car blow through the stoplight, and they take off in pursuit. Well, they're trying to flag down, I guess, with sirens and whatnot. Maybe even they have a speaker, that they're telling them to pull over. The car with the thugs and Clark are not going to pull over because they have kidnapped Clark. They're wanting to kill him somewhere. And the very last thing they want to do is stop for the police and answer questions about what they're doing, because heaven forbid they have to lie. So anyways, they won't stop. So in not stopping, it is then warranted for Sergeant Casey to unholster his gun and first fire a warning shot. I'm not exactly sure how that works. But then he shoots a couple more times through the back windshield of the car they're pursuing. Now, I don't know if those were the warning shots or not. If they are, that's a hell of a warning. I mean, I'm sorry. That's like, dude. So, I'm glad, I have blown a stop sign or two in my time. One time I was pulled over after doing it. I'm glad that that's not why I was pulled over, is because dude was taking shots at me. I thought that's kind of extreme. But maybe that's just me. I don't know.
And Clark's reaction to the pair of bullets coming in through that back window is funny. Help! Bullets! It's just because he's acting. And so that's what makes it even funnier. And the thug, who's just been pissed off at Clark this whole time because Clark won't shut his mouth. He doesn't even care about the bullets. He just would just shut your yap.
That's all he cares about is Clark is continuing to go on. Yeah. And actually, these bullets look like they should have gotten the thug from where he's sitting and everything. Yeah. So, all of their efforts, including taking shots at the car is not pulling over. So Casey puts in a call for some assistance. In answer to Casey's broadcast, police cars head toward James Street from all directions. So I now am getting the image of like an O.J. Simpson type car chase, where the car, you can't outspeed them. So you're going to slow down to 15 miles an hour and just keep going, not stopping. and the cars are just starting to pile up and back up behind you. You know, I pictured that kind of car chase, as opposed to the everybody zhuzhing by at 80 miles an hour, you know, just car after car after car. I like the first image better.
I'm kind of picturing that last car chase scene in the Blues Brothers.
Oh yeah, okay, there we go.
And is it you know, I think I mentioned last week, not in the last episode, that I'm a bit colorblind. Is it me, or are a lot of these cars pink?
No, they seem to be pink. In this one panel, I don't know if that's the car they're chasing, or it shouldn't be Lois's car, although Lois's car is in two different colors here below.
Yeah.
This red car, I don't know who the red car there at the top of the panel is. I don't, because it's red, whereas all the other cars are whatever color you want to say. To me, they look pink. So obviously that one was made to be different, but I don't know why. Their car, maybe it's their car. Their car is kind of a brownish.
Yeah.
So if in 4-color you miscolored it, I guess it could be red.
Yeah.
So then we find out that Lois, she has finished her 20 attempted interviews, and it doesn't really say, but I kind of suspect that her interviews turned out the same as Clark's did. She probably didn't get anywhere because there's nowhere to get, really. She is listening on her shortwave. I didn't know this is the way shortwave works, but I think of shortwave as amateur radio now, and police two-way communication is not going to come over typically, I don't think, amateur wavelengths. So,
hey, maybe back then.
Yeah. So she turns on to see if anything is going on, and she catches Casey asking for help, and then the updates from the different patrol cars, I'm sure, as they're getting involved. So she's like, oh, James Street, that's only a block away. Maybe I can write an eyewitness account. She thinks something else is going on, and she's just in the right place at the right time to check into it. Well, she turns onto James Street, not into, but onto, just in time to get caught in the line of fire. So she makes the convoy. Ain't she a beautiful sight? In between the Sergeant Casey's pursuing car, which I guess should be the lead pursuit, and the car that Clark Kent is in, she gets in between them. So she gets in the line of fire as Casey is continuing to fire on this car. Apparently his couple times that didn't do anything weren't enough. He just kept going after all. At some point it's going to work. If I just fire enough, it'll, you know.
And that makes me think of the scene from Raising Arizona, where they're chasing high and just blam, 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 blam.
Yep. Yeah. So Casey tells him, even though he is the one shooting, he says, lower your guns. It's the Daily Planet hoodoo. Lois Lane in the way. The Daily Planet hoodoo. I don't understand why she's a hoodoo, but and the other officer here in the car says, leave it up to her to turn up and mess things. And actually, there's a third guy in this patrol car. When we first saw him, there were just two. So now, not only have other cars joined the chase, but a man has joined in their car to help out. So we're zipping on down, and the bad guys decide that they can't get away. So what they need to do is they need to ditch the evidence. So they throw Clark out the car. Lois is the next car up. So now she has to avoid hitting Clark, and she swerves in such a way that it takes out Sergeant Casey in the first police pursuit car. And I would imagine the entire pursuit, you know, they just stack up like we always see, going over the embankments and crossing other lanes and jumping through billboards and all that kind of stuff. That's a Smokey and the Bandit reference. As they all stop because she has blocked the road. She hops out of the car, checks and sees that Clark is okay. Casey jumps out of the car. All three of them have a 3-panel little beefy back and forth kind of sniping at each other here. Ultimately, the Lois pulls the lead card, and she says, well, you know, I should be pissed because Clark didn't thank me. He never does anything, never appreciates anything that I do from it. And instead, he just complains. She says, you're both just so lucky I'm a lady, I guess, meaning, or I would give you a piece of my mind or tell you what I'm really thinking.
Or she'd start throwing hands.
Ooh, there you go. So that scene is over. Lois and Clark head back to the Daily Planet. Start making some phone calls, to try to get some more information. Well, Clark, when he was captured, of course, now he has those numbers in his head. So he makes a quick call to figure out where the number went. Number he had overheard lifting. Oh, as he's figuring it out, getting the information, Lois picks up on another line and overhears the conversation. So he is told, and she overhears, that the phone number is to the Jackson Jewelry Company, that the dude called when they had Clark tied up for instructions as to what to do. So Clark whooshes away, changes. Okay, no, that does make sense. Changes into Superman and takes off, but before, as Superman, he can get to the jewelry company. Lois has already left and gets to the jewelry company before him. I'm not sure how that works. She sees Mr. Nelson of Nelson and Lassiter going into Mr. Jackson of Jackson's Jewelry Company, his main office. So she wants to get an inroad. She plays to being a friend of the secretary and starts trying to get information from some of the custodial staff about the secretary at so-and-so's office. So we have a panel there. Superman arrives up on the roof. He's checking with his microscopic vision down through however many floors, and he sees, what would it be? He sees Nelson selling a large diamond to Jackson, who pays $50,000 for it. Well, Superman can tell that the diamond is not real. Does he say it's glass or it's fake? He says it's glass. As you know, interestingly enough, we don't know that there's any connection between these two, the Nelson Lassiter or the Jackson Jewelry, but we do know that Jackson is directly involved because his connection to the dudes that kidnapped Clark. So now we have Jackson buying bogus jewelry from Nelson and Lassiter. So there's an interesting connection so far. Jackson notices outside someone is snooping in his window. So here we have one can only assume, a Superman hanging from the window. Yeah. We only see his shadow. Actually, the window is not apparently a window that you can see through. It's opaque rather than see-through, because he just sees the shadow of Superman. Takes a couple shots at him, runs over to the window to check for the body, I guess. I don't know. He's already been involved in one dude perhaps falling to his death. Perhaps. So he goes to the window and nope. Instead of falling, if he did hit the dude managed to climb up. So Jackson goes out into the hallway and goes up to the roof of the building and is waiting for Superman, because he is still Superman, as he climbs up. So he climbs up, fakes being injured. Jackson maybe takes another shot at him, can't really tell. Well, no, here he does in the next panel. Takes another shot at Superman, supposedly killing Superman, because Superman tries to get him to stop, but then fakes being shot and injured and falls off of the building. He falls unto a bumble. There's another reference. What is that? Santa Claus is Coming to Town? Is that the name of that? Bumbles don't bounce?
It's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Yes, sorry. And actually, at first, bumbles do bounce.
Yeah.
Like Superman, he bounces off of the street, and we don't know, because we have a couple panels here. We have a narration panel, and then we have a Mr. Jackson talking to Marjorie Farnsworth, who is his secretary, who they made it a point to give her first and last name, and is the one that Lois was trying to buddy up to get information, to get access ultimately to Jackson's office when she saw Nelson go in. So this was the secretary. As I said, in two different panels, we get her first name and then we get her last name. So Marjorie Farnsworth apparently is important enough that we get the whole name. Now we get back to Superman, who is bounced, and instead of holding, although this counts, it's a subset of the counts that I've been making. as is the other one. That's a subset. You don't know it was Superman because you couldn't see him, but come on, it was Superman.
No, yeah.
So
It
so
counts.
that's a holding sub, shadow, and this is sub, because actually what he's doing is he's jumped up and he's reached out with one foot, and with one muscular foot and leg he's holding himself out suspended from the window with just his tippy toe on the eave of the windowsill, so that he can look in and once again see what Jackson is doing. So let's see, is this side of this is not Jackson, this is one of the other dudes. Superman, when I'm clearing out of no, this is Jackson. I'm sorry. This is Jackson calling to say that he's getting ready to bug out because Superman saw him. And whoever he's talking to tells him, well, no, since you've got Superman there, I'll give you $100,000 if you take care of Superman. So he just spent 50. And so if he does this, he can make that back plus another 50. So he'll be pretty good. Yeah. We then cut to Jackson's office again, although that doesn't look like Jackson. Isn't that where Marjorie Farnsworth is? And then
it's the office, but that's just some other dude.
Yeah, I guess another person in the Nelson and Lassiter, whatever kind of offices. Are they lawyers?
It's a jewelry store, which is weird that they have a receptionist.
Jackson. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's the Jackson. Yeah, jewelry with offices and like it's a corporate part of the jewelry, like a chain or something. So again, Lois now has information that she's going to use through her knowledge of Marjorie and family and pretending to be a friend. She sneaks a ledger and a small black book. Yeah, of course, the little black book and the ledger from Jackson's office while this other dude here has his back turned. And before she can leave with these items, a couple of the thugs, presumably the two dudes that had kidnapped Clark and threw him out of the car and all that stuff, come into Jackson's office to update Jackson on all the happenings, because this is the first time, I guess, they finally were able to get away from the massive police chase where the whole city turned out after him.
And did you mention that Lois's clever disguise that she's wearing?
Oh, she's wearing a pair of glasses. And I mean, why not? Because it worked. It continues to work for Clark. Going on, 90 years, 80 years, 80 some years. It's been enough of a disguise for Clark. Lois, unbeknowing, decides to try it too. That's all she needs is a pair of glasses. Well, we find out that perhaps it's not sufficient, because these two thugs are like, something about her. And they start to hassle her and finally grab her up and take the glasses off. And they're like, it's what I thought. You're Lois Lane. I know you. And so now her disguise is blown. The thugs tell Jackson who she is. She's a reporter. They know that she was involved with talking to the heirs also. So some aspect of that side of things they know she's involved with. Well, Jackson says, well, okay, if that's the case, then what we'll do is we'll just grab you up and we'll throw you in the safe here. And it's a big, huge walk-in safe. We'll throw you in the safe and keep you handy while we, take off, I guess. I don't think they really say. They capture her and decide the best thing to do is to throw her in the safe. So to keep her quiet, I guess. Maybe they know if she stays in the safe long enough, she'll die because there's an air problem. So maybe they're trying to kill her. I don't know, but they just put her in there to hold her. And as soon as they do, Superman comes in the window. Now, unfortunately, we don't know that he's been waiting there, or is he still? I guess he's still out there from when he was standing on the sill. So he saw all this. He saw Lois come in. He saw her disguise be broken by the guy, saw her get thrown in the safe, and then finally steps in to decide to do something. They pull out pistols, bullets, no effect. second time in recent memory that he has punched or thrown guns through the wall.
Yeah.
He actually says that he hurls, or the narrator tells us he hurls them clear through the wall.
I think it was
And
the
then
second story in the issue when with the other swamp story throws them through that shack, because they're
through
like,
the shack, yeah.
yeah, they don't believe he's who he says he is until he throws the guns through the wall. Then they're like, whoa.
So he disarms them. Jackson, now he has a better gun because his gun shoots corrosive bullets. So that'll make the difference. He fires. They make it a point of showing that it bounces off of Superman and hits the safe. Now, I don't know if it's not necessary to weaken the safe for Superman to do anything to it. Did this bullet perhaps go through and maybe it threatened Lois, is why they showed that? Because it was able to go completely through the safe, being corrosive?
Yeah, it says it penetrates the thick steel door, and he's like, Lois, within the safe, perhaps she's injured.
Yeah, so Superman runs over, rips the door off the safe, pulls Lois out, throws the bad guys in, and jams the safe door back up there. Would have been cool if he'd used some heat vision to kind of weld the door.
Yeah.
But he doesn't do that yet, so that's not happening. Rescued Lois. Superman leaps, and actually they show him leaping out of a window to a nearby building where he sets her down. The building that they're on is the police prosecutor's office. So it apparently is right across the street from Jackson's jewelry company. Not that that necessarily makes any difference, but there we go. That's what we're shown. Superman flies off. Lois is going to go down and I guess file a report about what she knows. Next up, we see the bad guys and Jackson. They're able to break their way out of that safe where they were put up. Jackson makes a call, and we see the other side of the call now. And, or do we? Is this Lassiter that takes this call? Jackson makes this call. I know of a way we can cover the Carling killing. Now listen. Yes, yeah. See, so I think that this is Jackson calling one of his cohorts. And the cohort is who we see here. So that means that this would have to be either Nelson or Lassiter. So I'm going to assume it's Lassiter because of what happens a little bit later here.
Yeah.
Third instance in this issue of Superman hanging outside a window. This time, the window is at the corner of a building. And so what Superman has done is he's flown and he's clasped onto the corner of the building like you would a pole if you were climbing a pole or a tree or something like that. So he's holding on, peering in the window, listening as he's at Metropolis Tower. So he is listening to the phone call here between Jackson and Lassiter, which this would be Lassiter's office because that's where the, what do they call it? Metropolis Tower. That's where all of this started. So this is Lassiter's office, which reinforces that this is Lassiter taking a call from Jackson, which overall, I agree with those people that are saying, well, what difference does it make necessarily who is doing what? I guess my point in trying to point that out is how difficult sometimes it is to keep up with who is doing what, just because of the nature of the artwork and the coloring and whatnot.
Yep.
Ultimately, in the story, does it matter? Overall, no. But as you're going through the story, it's kind of nice to be able to keep up with who's zooming who. And whose boots are under whose bed and, what have you. So next up, we are at the prosecutor's office, which is where Lois was dropped off. So she's talking to the prosecutor. She's handing over the two books that she has. One is a ledger, which I think it even said it was a ledger. The little black book, though, it turns out, has a code. And I guess the code allows you to break something that is written in the ledger to fully understand all of the numbers. So I guess something in the ledger is coded, and this is the key to that code is the way I saw that. It can be seen that Morton Carling was murdered for $50,000 paid by George Steele, one of the heirs. So finally, we get a name for one of the 40, George Steele. I want to say that George Steele was a big, gruff, bear-looking dude that wrestled in like the 40s and 50s. George Steele.
George the Animal.
Was his name Steele? George?
I think so. I'll look it up.
It sounds familiar for some reason, and that's what I pictured was that wrestler. I know that probably isn't the reference that they're making, but that just popped into my head when I read that. So Lois and, of course, Sergeant Casey and all their other squad cars are going to the Jackson Jewelry Company because she knew via... Yeah, that's him.
George the Animal Steele.
Yep. Steele. Okay, that's well, cool. Memory doesn't fail me for once. Going to see whatever. She's lost track of Clark. She doesn't know necessarily what Superman's doing, but she knows that her next step is at this Jackson Jewelry Company with the police in tow because of the little black book in the ledger here. So they head off that way. We go to we go to the Jackson Steel Company. Jackson Jewelry Company. And we have Mr. Jackson, Mr. Nelson, and Mr. Lassiter. All of the namesakes for the two companies, and all three of the bigwigs, as far as we know in this. So they're all there, talk about who's going to do what and everything, and finalize all of this and put all of this stuff to rest. Well, Nelson decides that he is going to poison Jackson. Okay. Now, Nelson and Lassiter are working together up to a point. Lassiter was not key on Nelson poisoning Jackson. He didn't know about that. That is probably an attempt to take out one person that knows, and so there's one less person that can turn evidence on the whole thing. Superman comes in just in time to save Jackson from taking the poison. When he hears...
Actually, if I can interrupt.
Yes.
It's Jackson is the one who puts the poison. It's Nelson that Jackson is trying to kill. Nelson is the guy. I guess he doesn't.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
He's their loose end.
Right. Yeah. So he and Lassiter, I think, are involved in some shenanigans.
Yeah. Because
Lassiter admits that, but not necessarily all of this stuff with the killing and the air and all that. So in finding out that his buddy here, his co-conspirator, was going to be killed because of something he knows, Lassiter just basically states evidence on all of it. And there's this little soliloquy. He says, Lassiter here, trying to sneak out and leave me in the lurch, huh? Well, then listen to this. Lassiter hired one of my men to bash and shove Carling through the window when Nelson was out of the room. He had Nelson buy that worthless diamond for him, and now he wanted me to poison Nelson so that it would look like suicide. Then he was going to pin all the blame on Nelson. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. That is Jackson, right?
Yeah, I guess it's Lassiter that's like, my partner, an accomplice in murder. If that's true, I insist he be prosecuted.
Right.
And so, that's when Jackson's like, oh, yeah? Well, let me tell you about Lassiter.
Know any of this. Yeah. So the story and then this little thing here just left me kind of confused. It wasn't, I don't think, necessarily as clear as it could have been done. So plus, again, you've got the three men, and they look just very, very similar, when you look at them.
Yeah. So basically, the Lassiter and Jackson were working together. Nelson, I guess, didn't quite understand what was going on. Lassiter used Nelson to buy the diamond for $50,000. And then they were going to poison Nelson and kill him to make it look like a suicide, and then Lassiter was going to blame it all on Nelson. Okay. This is all Nelson. We didn't know anything about it. Obviously, it weighed on his conscience because he killed himself.
So then, with the jig being up, Nelson decides that he's going to try to run away. He's going to shoot Lassiter. Superman intervenes, grabs that bullet. That's he hasn't grabbed bullets with his hands or blocked them with his hands very often. So this is one of the few times so far he's done that. I know he has actually snatched them a couple times with the fingers there, punk, just plucking them out of the air. So then Nelson gets away, runs down to a car, tries to get away, but Superman grabs the car and flips it over on its roof, killing. We don't know that it killed him, but I don't know how you could truly toss a car like this and not, and the person inside live. But
yeah.
So that's what he did. I guess the police round everybody up. We have the final panel where it has become the competition between Lois and Clark as to who gets the story in about what we saw in the story. Who gets the paper story in. So here, Clark, I'm still trying to figure out how you could have rushed that murder ring story into print before I did. And Clark says, maybe I have more ability than you give me credit for. And inside, he says, so far she hasn't guessed at my real identity as Superman. But this can't go on forever. Someday I'll make a slip. And then...
Bum, bum, bum.
So, you said that the title of the story, what was the exact title again? Jackson's Murder Ring. Was a double entendre. What were the two entendres?
You could get because you can get a ring at a jewelry store.
Okay, so that was the second. The first one was the obvious murder and everything. And being a jeweler, you can get a ring, and yeah,
that's why I was like, sort of.
Yeah, unfortunately, they didn't use a ring for anything. That would have been obvious double entendre. Lois faked and bought an engagement ring to get involved or something like that. And it would have,
And this could be one of those, because a lot of these stories, if, when I'm putting the notes together and I go to Mike's Amazing World of Comics, they always have like notes. And most of these stories were originally untitled. And it's like DC titles them after the fact. So
probably when they start reproducing them to be able to keep them separate and call them up and all that kind of stuff.
So had they come up with the idea back then to calling the story Jackson's Murder Ring, maybe they would have included an actual ring to be part of the murder weapon thing.
To double entendre it, to make it that much funnier. I don't know if kids back then would have necessarily gotten that or not. No. Hard to say. Okay, so this finishes up Superman issue number 9. What were your thoughts, if you have any left, about the story, and what were your thoughts about the issue as a whole?
The story I really enjoyed. Lot of stuff going on. The ending, I had to really go through the ending a couple of times to really understand what was happening, to really understand that, Jackson gets away from the jewelry store. He calls up, hey, I got away. I gave Superman the slip. And whoever's on the other line says, well, I know how we can wrap this all up and get away with everything. And so I guess that idea was for Jackson to poison Nelson, so that he and Lassiter could blame it all on Nelson. And then, but there's so much going on. And again, the art, because when we go back to Lois going into Jackson's jewelry store, we were really confused about the guy that's in there. Is that Jackson? Because the guy's bald on top and Jackson has a mustache, but Jackson's ledger and his little black book are just there on the counter. So unless Jackson just leaves that shit all over the place and, without worrying that anybody would look at it, that's got to be Jackson. But it's not the same color suit. I don't know. Yeah.
Now
Cassidy's got to do a bit better.
Maybe some of our art concerns, if you want to use that word, maybe they would be relieved if we were able to actually look at physical copies of the book, not microfiche copies, because that even messes up the color and things like that. Maybe in the actual book, if we had it physically and were able to look through, maybe the artwork would be a little bit more clear, particularly as far as coloring goes. I do not like the recolored reproductions of these Golden Age stories in these books. I don't like this method that they use at all. I wish they wouldn't, but I guess it must be money, because whatever method they use seems to be what they do over and over. DC in just about any of these Golden Age compendiums that they put out. I've looked at Batman, I've looked at Wonder Woman and Superman, and it's this oversaturated. The coloring is just bad. Fortunately, this is not how the coloring looked then. Or I don't like the coloring.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that Lois's car changes color a couple of times. I think Casey's car, the police car, changes color a couple of times. It's just
Now, I will say, of course, there are coloring errors. There's even coloring errors that pop up now in modern comic books. Stuff like that is going to happen. But I can't help but think that some amount is the transfer of whatever original they're using to making these reproductions. That's okay. As far as this story, I did enjoy this quite a bit too. This one and the previous story, very, very complex. A little difficult. I found this one a little bit more difficult to follow than the previous story. So the final story in the book was the most trying mentally on me. And so, if I wasn't already tired from reading, 4 Golden Age stories and a Superman, the last one was a little tough to follow. And okay. What were your thoughts on this issue of Superman?
It was an excellent issue. Most of these issues of Superman, there's usually at least one of the stories that I haven't really cared for, that I can recall. It's been a year since we come back to do these, but I feel like my memory is that every one of these Superman issues, there's been at least one story that has just been kind of But I really enjoyed all 4 of these. Third one, my favorite of the 4. But good issue.
I will go so far as to say, I hope, having reached this particular plateau, that the writing is able to maintain this moving forward in the Superman books. Because if we start getting a book with 4 stories like this every time, these are going to be just massively fun to read.
Yes.
I don't know if that's possible, but I, at this point, after reading issue 9, I can certainly have hopes for issue 10, and I'll just move forward with that.
And of course, issue 10 is the issue where they officially admit that he's flying.
Okay, I look forward to seeing that. And before that, though, let me throw out, I mentioned this a couple episodes back, the next episode, we will be talking about a Superman story in a book that we have not talked about yet. Basically, I think we've been talking about just 2 books, Action Comics, and then Superman's eponymous title, the Superman book.
We've had the 2 New York's Fair comics, but
that's right.
Those were one-offs.
So this is a new book. This one should, I think, enter. I don't know if it enters the rotation right off the bat, but it will quickly enter the rotation of yet another Superman book that we have stories from.
Well, go ahead and tell everybody what we're going to be looking at next.
The next story is going to be a story from World's Best Comics, the first issue, which with the second issue, I believe, is going to be called World's Finest Comics. So that will be our next. And this the cover that I have in this compendium is a cover of Superman, Batman, and Robin. And it tells us also that Zatara is included in this. So it's another anthology book. And those, right now, I don't know, because I try not to look too much ahead, so that everything that I say is relatively fresh. I try not to can too much of my thoughts and anything like that. So I haven't looked at this. I don't know. The cover tells me there'll be at least 3 stories. I don't know if that's all that there is or not.
Looking at Mike's Amazing World of Comics, of course, we get one Superman story.
Right.
But there's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
Nice.
9, 10, 11 stories. Superman, red, white, and blue. Don't know what that is.
Okay, that's listed here on the cover too.
Yeah.
I thought, okay.
Crimson Avenger.
Okay, I know him.
Johnny Thunder.
I know him.
Young Doc Davis.
Nope.
Zatara.
Know him.
Drafty.
Nope.
Nope. King.
Nope.
Punch Parker.
No.
Lando, Man of Magic.
Nuh-uh.
And the Batman story.
Okay. So there are 11 stories in 96, and that's what the cover tells us here, 96 pages. So either all of them are relatively short, or some are going to be significantly shorter to give more pages to Superman and Batman, which I imagine would be the big ones. Crimson Avenger and Johnny Thunder, I also know from JSA. So they're moderately popular. Zatara, moderately. The other characters, including Red, White, and Blue, I don't believe I've ever even heard of any of the other characters. Perhaps someone who's listening that is more versed in DC Golden Age, maybe those characters will ring names. Like I know that like in Action Comics, you know, there's 8 or 9 stories there full of people that I have no idea who they are, because my interest has always been in the superheroes. So the doctors and the adventures and the romancy kind of things, I'm not as familiar with those.
Well, I can tell you that the Superman and the Batman stories are each 13 pages each.
Okay.
Each 13 pages each. Zatara is 9 pages. And then at the lowest page count is the Drafty story at 4 pages.
Ooh, wow. Okay.
And the others are 6 to 8 pages.
Okay. So the 2 big namesakes do have more pages, which you would expect, but okay. Well, cool. So that is just one of the stories that we'll talk about next video recording.
Yeah.
So,
and then when we just, as far as the frequency of this book, when we get to issue number 2, Mike's Amazing World of Comics has it listed as a quarterly book. So like Superman is quarterly. So
right. So it will drop into our rotation. Hard to say how frequently the stories will come out of this. We'd have to look at the index of this book.
Looks like we have all the same characters in the second issue too. Superman, Red, White, and Blue, Crimson Avenger, Johnny Thunder, Young Doc Davis, Zatara, Drafty, King.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So that cool. I'll hold any other thoughts until we talk about this book. But that's cool. So we're starting to expand our Superman universe into, you know, some of the books that we know and are familiar with now as we sit here that we know Superman has been in. We're starting to see them come up. So that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, looking forward to it. I paged through the story just to see if it was going to be 13 pages like the others.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really pay attention to what was going on. I have no idea. I don't know. I couldn't even tell you just who I think the artist might be. And I closed that page down. So I couldn't tell you who it's going to be. So yeah, I'm looking forward to jumping into it brand new and keep up with that Superman goodness. And I would like to think if they're going to start a whole new title that's going to feature a Superman story, that first issue should have a pretty good story in it. I would like to think
it should, but yeah, we'll have to see. Let's see, where are we at in the omnibus here? Are we 157 pages out of How many pages are in this bad boy?
376.
Yeah, so we're getting close to about halfway through volume 3. So
yeah,
that's cool. All right.
And it's weird to see the cover of this World's Best and see that big smile on Batman's face.
Well, but he smiles a lot in the Golden Age.
Does he?
He's not gotten grim and gritty yet. I mean, you fight crime for 90 years and the Joker gets out of prison every 2 months, and see how much you smile.
I need to start reading those Golden Age Batmans, because I've read, of course, Detective 27. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of one of those that you have to read. And I know that Bruce Wayne spends a lot of time in that story being all like, ho hum, I'm a bored rich kid, you know.
Yes. Batman and Robin do not have the kind of capabilities to rely on like Superman does.
Yeah.
So writing just another schmo, except in an outfit who's kind of brainy, it gives those Golden Age Batman stories a whole different kind of feel than what the Golden Age Superman stories do.
Yeah, I had to start reading them.
But they're every bit as much fun. Well, I mean, Batman, you have the gimmicks. You have that funky car that he drives. You have the funky boat and the funky plane and so they're a lot of fun. I started reading the Golden Age omnibus for Batman, the first one. I don't know if I ever got out of the first one before my mind just drifted and I went on to other things, but that was a lot of fun.
And I'm pretty sure I have those. I know that there was a time where,
if Superman is on Hoopla, I'm sure Batman is. Probably Wonder Woman is also.
Yeah, I can't do Hoopla anymore, but I know that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you told me that. Didn't mean to rub it in.
Yeah, I've got volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Batman and the Golden Age. They, every once in a while they have really good sales on Comixology, and I grab up a bunch of stuff that
get them that way.
I haven't read yet, but my butt hurts. Sorry.
Well, I think we're at a place where we can finalize things and head out.
Steven mentioned that his butt hurts, so I guess we should wrap this up.
Time to go. That's the sign.
It's like when
not one of these or one of these, but my butt hurts.
Steven's rubbing at his butt.
Yep. The donut cushion is not working as well as it did when we first started.
That's how I play you off.
Yeah. I don't know, Ed. My butt hurts. Okay. We don't want to talk about that. It's okay. I'm sorry.
It's a very highly creative code word. My butt hurts. Okay, let's wrap it up.
All right, then. That's it for us, guys. Which actually, do you have anything else to add?
I felt like I did, but I don't think I do. Good story, great issue. Yes. Looking forward to just keeping on.
I think our stop and start for the show happened at a pretty good place, because since we have resumed, the stories have been very entertaining compared to what they were in season 1 or whatever you want to call the Hinter years. It's definitely been very enjoyable coming back into these Golden Age Superman stories.
Yep.
All right, folks, and all of you that may be listening on YouTube and nobody commented, we want to thank you for listening. So until next week, I am Ed, that is Steven, and this was the Superman Super Show.
Bye.
Ciao.
Okay, stop recording. Boop, boop, ba-doop, boop. Boop, ba-doop, ba-doop. 72.
Alrighty.
So for anybody who is watching live, or anybody who watches the live video afterwards, before Monday, our first of the new episodes lands on the main feed on Monday morning.
Cool beans.
So it went up on my Patreon last Monday, So, yeah.
I have gotten comments from folks that I follow on Twitter, looking forward to the fact that we've brought the show back. So that's been cool.
Yeah,
There's been a cool response to it.
Well, it's like the two podcasts that I've done that are probably again, successful is however you want to define that word, but I Hither Came Conan and the Superman Super Show have the most listeners. So, and I think Hither Came Conan was just because I happened to start doing it at a time when people, the Titan comic was getting ready to come out.
Okay.
People really wanted to, because I got a lot of emails over that first year that was like, oh, I'm so glad you're doing this. I keep looking for Conan podcasts, and the ones that are out there are just talking about the Robert E. Howard stories. And I'm glad to find one that's talking about comics. And then, the Superman Super Show, I think it's just a combination of the two of us, because there's a number of Golden Age Superman podcasts out there.
Yeah. It's not something that was like lacking necessarily.
Yeah.
There was coverage of it. Yeah. Maybe it's us. I don't know. I mean, I enjoy doing it. If somebody enjoys listening to me talk about something that I enjoy, okay, cool.
Yep. Now, as far as us getting back together to do a next one, let's skip a week. Okay. I'm fairly certain that Rana has this next Saturday off, so not knowing, she seems to kind of work every other Saturday, so maybe it'll work out that if we do every other Saturday going forward, it'll be on Saturdays that she works, so I'll already be up.
Fit into that schedule as well. Okay. So we're looking at a no for the 26th, which is next Saturday, but a potential for November 2, which is in 2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we'll be looking at, I guess that, God, I can't remember the name of that issue now.
World's Finest.
World's Best. And then, so it'll be World's Best issue 1. And then an action
story. Yeah.
35, I think.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And also, if you do have time to read some other stuff, I definitely would recommend that Golden Age Batman stuff.
Yeah, I need to get into it. When it comes to just the stuff that I'm reading for pleasure, it's a lot of new old stuff, because if you look at my, I guess, digital pull list, it's like G.I. Joe, the Transformers, the Gatchaman.
Right.
Space Ghost. I'm getting the Space Ghost series.
Okay.
And then with some of the others, there's only a couple more, but they're all like, rebooted titles of old. Oh, Thundercats. Yeah. I've been reading the Thundercats.
They're all nostalgia reads.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
But it's like new stories about nostalgia properties, basically. Yeah.
And have you seen that they're going to be doing that with Herculoids?
Yes.
Okay. Have you seen that they're going to be doing that with Silverhawks?
No. Oh God.
That was the most recent announcement, was a Silverhawks book that I've seen.
And I think they also announced a Thundar the Barbarian. So.
Oh, really? That I haven't seen. Now, okay. Yeah, that's okay.
See, I've been.
Did you know that there is a Thundar cartoon podcast out there?
No.
Yes. Right, there's a podcast. It's hosted by 3 guys that are science fiction fantasy writers.
Oh, okay.
And what they're doing is they started with the first episode, and then looking at all of the episodes and where they supposedly occurred, the next episode is the closest to where they started geographically. So it would be like, this would be the place that they would have most likely gotten to the soonest as far as being able to travel on foot. And they covered that episode. And then so what are you doing? Trying to find it?
Yeah, there's the first one that comes up is Thundar Road.
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Now, they might not have put out an episode in a while. I think in like the last 3 years, they've dropped like maybe 2 episodes. But
let's see. The last
It's-
episode was from December of 2023.
Yeah, it's still active because every now and then I'll ask them and they're like, yeah, we have one in the can. We just haven't edited it yet. I'm like, okay, cool.
So it's Noel Thingvall, David May, and Michael May.
Yes, David
Yeah.
and Michael May, I recognized. Thingvall, I don't think I've ever read anything of his.
Explore the episodes and cities of the Thundar the Barbarian cartoon in geographical order.
Yes.
Not as episodes were produced or aired. Cool.
It is. It's very cool. It's fun to. And when I first ran into that podcast, that cinched in my mind that there is a podcast for anything if you just look hard enough. Everything is covered in podcasts.
Thundar, let me make sure. Let me double check. But let's see. Yeah, Thundar is on my list of top 5 most favorite Saturday morning cartoons.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. I talked about this Growing Up Geek podcast that I've been working on, and I got the first episode done, and then I kind of thought, you know what? One of the things because I always change my mind, and it's better to do that before I release any episodes.
Yeah, I'd say
is that I know that regardless of what I put out there, at some point after episodes are up, I'm going to go, oh, maybe I should have done it this way. And then I'll just start, but I'm trying to get as much of that out of me before I launch this show. But because I did this whole episode, the first one it's almost an hour long, and it's the history of Saturday morning cartoons. And then I thought, you know what? It would be actually kind of better if I split that up into 5 episodes. Because you've got the origins, and then Saturday morning cartoons in the 60s, and then 70s, 80s, 90s, and then the death of Saturday morning cartoons, 2000s and 2010s. And so I've got the first episode. If I'm going to go that route, I've got that one ready to go, ready to start recording. I've got it all laid out and ready to go. But I've been talking to another podcaster, and I haven't asked him about this yet, which is why I haven't said his name. But I think I'm going to do a 6th episode where he and I talk about our top 5 favorite Saturday morning cartoons.
That's
so, yeah.
Nostalgia is hot right now because there is a huge population that is in a certain age demographic that listens to podcasts. And so the nostalgia listens, whether it be music or movies or TV, or that is right now, I think that is the audience sweet spot. If you're wanting to do something nostalgia related for people in their 40s to 60s, I think that is the people who are listening to podcasts.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. I asked you earlier if you watched G.I. Joe back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Were you a big fan of the G.I. Joe, or was it just?
No, I enjoyed it. I watched it as frequently as I could. I remember, though, G.I. Joe being an afternoon cartoon more so than a Saturday morning.
Yeah, nothing burns my hide more than when I go out there, because I'm trying to find Saturday morning cartoons that I don't remember. And a perfect example was this show that launched in like 81 or 82 called Space Stars. And it was a Hanna-Barbera. It was an anthology show that had Space Ghost, Herculoids, a show called a team called Teen Force.
Yes, I remember Teen Force.
And then Dino Mutt and the Astro Mutts or something like that. No, Astro Mutt and the Space Mutts or something like that. But I had originally put on my top 5 the Herculoids. But then I went out and I started watching the Herculoids on YouTube, the episodes that I could find. And the first moment I sat down and looked at Wikipedia, I'm looking at their description, and it says that they're on the island or on the planet of Amzot. And then I'm like, okay, they're on the island or they're on the planet of Quasar. And in parentheses, it says later changed to Quasar in the 80s reboot. And I was like, what?
80s
80s
reboot.
That's what the Space Stars was. All the Herculoid
Okay.
shows on Space Stars are a reboot. It's the same exact show, same exact characters. I think the only thing they changed was the name of the planet. It's new cartoons. It's not the same ones that they did in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I was like, Space Stars, what the fuck is that? I don't remember a show called Space Stars, but these are obviously the Herculoids episodes I watched.
Right.
So I started doing some research and I'm like, okay, well, Space Ghost. All right, maybe that's when I was watching Space Ghost. And then I went, Teen Force, what the hell is that? And so I went online and I found the first episode of Space Stars. And the first thing that the episode does is it gives you a quick, today on Space Stars, Space Ghost does this. And it shows you a little bit of Space Ghost and stuff. And then shows you what's coming from each of the cartoons. And so then when Teen Force came on, I went, that looks super familiar. And then they played the intro. And I was like, oh my God, Teen Force. Yes, they rode the freaking space motorcycles and they had the two little weird. I totally remember Teen Force, but I don't remember that they were called Teen Force. And I don't remember there being a show called Space Stars.
Right.
But that's obviously what I was watching because I would have been like 9 or 10 when that show started.
Okay.
So I'll go. I've been going out there and I've been like, all right, what are some of the more popular Saturday morning cartoons? Bloop. And every list has G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man, all shows that were after school shows during the week. They were not Saturday morning cartoons. And it just drives me crazy when people refer to those cartoons as Saturday morning cartoons because they were not.
I agree.
That was a long way for me to just complain about that. But yeah. Anyway, the reason I ask you about G.I. Joe is because I'm thinking that when it comes to my season 2, I'll do it on G.I. Joe. And I could probably get 3 episodes just out of the original 12-inch action figure, how that came to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then an episode about the relaunch in the 80s and how it's because of the comics that they changed the whole concept. And then that can also be a talk about the comic books. And then the 3rd episode be about the cartoon and beyond. But I want to try to do each one of these seasons where I do like these 4 to 5 to 6 episodes that are just the history. And then a final episode where I get together with somebody and then we just talk about it.
Right.
And I thought, well, if Ed grew up watching G.I. Joe, then I would invite Ed. It's going to be a while.
Sure.
But so, they have all of the episodes on YouTube.
Okay.
The official Hasbro site has all the episodes. They've got a streaming where they just play G.I. Joe 24/7 streaming, which is kind of fun to just sit and watch G.I. Joe that way.
Put it on and just, yeah.
But then they also have you can watch the first mini series and then the second mini series and then the actual show and stuff like that. It's pretty neat considering that they don't have that for Transformers on the Hasbro site, but I don't, I can only assume because of the popularity of the movies and probably the deal they made with the movies that maybe they don't own the streaming rights to the cartoon anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But there's like a website or a YouTube channel called like Hasbro Fans or something that has all the original Transformers episodes up. So, yeah.
Well, I'm surprised if somebody else owns the rights that they haven't shut that down yet.
Yeah. I don't know how long that one's been up. So who knows? There's a lot of stuff that if you can't find streaming anywhere, somebody has put it up on YouTube.
Oh yeah. It's available. Yeah.
All right, dude. So not next week, but the week after.
Okay. Yep.
And then in 6 months or so, maybe we'll talk about some G.I. Joe.
Okay. Sounds good. Just let me know, man.
I've been falling asleep to G.I. Joe recently. It's been kind of fun.
Okay. Okay.
It's been a while since I've seen a lot of those old episodes. So
yeah, I can't remember the last time that I watched a GI Joe episode. It's been quite a while.
yeah, well, start with the Mass Device, the original five episode miniseries. Before, you know, they had 2 miniseries before there was even a show.
Mm-hmm.
And then the show started with their 3rd miniseries, The Pyramid of Darkness, which it's got some moments in it that make you go, oh my God, I watched this and enjoyed this as a kid.
Well, yeah. There's a lot of animation that is kind of like that somewhere
Yeah.
along the way from back in the day.
I mean, there's a moment in Pyramid of Darkness where Snake Eyes is teamed up with Shipwreck, because that's a pairing that makes sense.
Well, sure.
And they're trying to escape from this city that is run by Cobra. And in order to do so, they make friends with a woman who's an entertainer at the Cobra Club. And so they go up on stage with her and perform with her. And Shipwreck is in this weird, like almost, I don't know, it's this green suit. And then frickin' Snake Eyes, with his Snake Eyes costume on, also has these clothes on over it that look like something Boy George would wear. And they're up there playing the saxophone, and they got the little parrot and the Timberwolf dancing and stuff. And I'm just like, whoa.
Yep. Okay.
But yeah, still, a lot of them are really fun. All right. I'm going to go eat some leftover Chinese food.
Okay. Sounds good.
We should probably end the
live stream.
So let's do that. Bye, everybody.
Ciao.